Hello, everyone. Welcome to BowTieSecurityGuy After Dark. I don't know what the episode is, and I try not to pay attention to it anymore because it just becomes too difficult. My guest today is Christina Barker. Christina, thank you so much for coming to hang out. I saw some of the things you were posting, and one of the biggest things I saw is that you actually are opening like true roles that are entry level, and you seem to be really invested in that, which we will get to. But let's talk about kind of where did your career start? But let's bring it back even before that. As a kid, were you somebody who liked to tinker and play, or what got you into this whole tech field?
Yeah, so I would say I have a very untraditional background when it comes to that. We had a home computer when I was a kid. I think we had a Commodore 64 for a while, and like every other kid, I liked to play some games on it and things like that. But I was never really like, I had a friend whose brother had a whole garage full of, computer boards and things like that, and he'd sit out there creating, and that was never really me. So I was a huge music nerd growing
Nice.
up. That was my thing. And yeah, when it came to actually getting into the workforce, I did all kinds of different stuff. I was an administrative assistant. I worked in ocean logistics for a while.
Hang
Let's see.
on. We can't just go over that and say it. What, like, what is ocean logistics?
Yeah, so there's something called what they call a stevedore company, and you
Okay.
kind of act as the coordinator for the actual terminals, the shipping lines, the truckers, the rail. You kind of coordinate this logistical nightmare in a way, to kind of make sure everything keeps moving. And so, yeah, I mean, I got a temp job in it when I was right out of high school, and kind of fell into that for a while, and did that off and on. And yeah, it's super interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
super
it's
interesting for
always
sure.
interesting to me is how many times you can take skills that you learn from a job that is just not anything related to the field that you ended up in and utilize those skills. So like as you were going through, right, you kind of scored that gig. Did that kind of get you on the analytics pass where you're like, "Hey, that's kind of cool. Like how can I take this further?" Or
Um,
where did that go after that?
Yeah, so not really. It didn't really, swerve me into that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
ended up moving. I was doing that when I lived on the West Coast. I moved to Texas, and in Austin, they don't really have much in the way of ocean logistic jobs. So I kind of fell back into some administrative work, where I was actually working for the state. And when I was there, there was a security team who did security awareness trainings, but more than just, your go through this web training thing once a year. They actually gave classes at lunchtime. And I went down and took a few of those and was like, oh, this is really cool. So, it definitely piqued my investigative and puzzle mind that I have, and kind of gave me a way to do that from a more professional perspective. And that's really how I got my foot in the door, right? So I was actually, I want to say, I was like 29, 30 when I
Yeah.
really started my cybersecurity IT journey. So I always like to tell people it's never too late. You don't have to come from that
I have a
background.
guy who's 60 who just got a job at a
There you
sock,
go.
right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it, you can always learn more. And I was very honest with him up front. I was like, this is gonna be a struggle, my brother. Like, but that doesn't mean it's not doable. You just got to put the work in and you got to put the cycles in. So at 30, you're coming in already like behind a lot of people in reality, right? Because there's a lot of people who've been doing this for 10 years at least.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So there's definitely, I think I still here 15 years later still get some imposter syndrome, which I always tell people, if you don't have imposter syndrome, then you're doing something wrong, because that's what keeps you sharp and good at your job. But yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't go the traditional route. I don't have a formal education and a college degree, but I took advantage of employers willing to pay for SANS training and certifications and things like that, and just kept working at it. And yeah, if you really like it and you really want to do it, it's definitely possible. I won't say it's super easy. You have to be diligent, but it can be done for sure.
I've I think a lot of people go into this assuming that there's like a shortcut. And in your experience, have you seen that, like, is there a way to kind of shortcut your way into security to kind of make that journey faster? Or is it gonna be a journey and it's kind of more of the marathon instead of a race?
I'm going to say it's a journey. And the reason I say that isn't even so much that you maybe can't initially shortcut, but one of the things that I really enjoy about this position or this field and industry, right, is it's constantly changing, right? Like I was going through some AI training today and I started, I'm listening and I'm thinking, my God, this is, so similar to what we were going through when I first started with cloud infrastructure and everybody moving. And there's always something new. There's always something different. And particularly in incident response, right, which is where I kind of focus my energy is, it's an arms race. So every time you figure out how to stop something, they come up with another way to do it, and there's never boring. So from a shortcut perspective, maybe initially, but you have to be willing to continue to put in the work and continue to learn and continue to grow because, you could learn everything today and 2 months from now, some of it's going to be obsolete.
That, and I feel like that is a very good point, is that we're always in this state of constant flux and learning.
Hmm.
And with the speed of things with AI and things of that nature, will just make things even more interesting, right?
Oh, for
Because
sure.
we're looking at what we did, like 44,000 CVEs last year, and we're on par to do like 60 or 70 to 80,000 this year. So
Yeah,
from
yeah.
a risk perspective, I did incident response for a long time. Tell people kind of what the job is like, and kind of what the sacrifice is for that role, because I don't think a lot of people understand there's a lot of sacrifice and a lot of time that sometimes you lose. You have to
Hmm.
take time out from family. So what has your experience been with IR?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, you have to kind of make that decision. I kind of put it in the same light of first responders or things like that, right? I have a brother who's a flight nurse, so
Yeah.
I tend to make that connection. But yeah, I mean, when something happens, you have to be there, right? Or you have to work with your team to make sure that somebody's available and all of that. And there are some sacrifices, but at the same time too, I think especially if you find, at least when I was running a SOC and incident responders, I tried really hard to kind of make that balance. So yeah, hey, you had to work, 24 hours straight, and
Yeah,
and
go take a day off,
yeah,
breathe.
at it, 4 o'clock on Friday. Any incident responder knows that's when things happen.
Oh my
Um,
god.
yeah,
Yeah,
right. It's never. I would love it if the attackers could just work Monday through Friday, eight to
I would
five.
like that too. It would be, and honestly, if you could stop working on the holidays, like
I would
most
agree.
attackers take the holidays off. You don't have to be the anomaly. Just take some time off. Like, it's
Please.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the servers will still be there in the new year. You don't need to attack us all year round. It's something funny because I pulled a bunch of analytics from our firewalls, back when I worked for a company, and I noticed the dramatic decrease in attacks over the holidays. And I was like, could everybody just like agree that we won't attack during that time? Can we
Right.
just,
Right.
yeah, like it's
You
all
have
good.
we have international laws for war and things like that. I think we should do the same thing for cyber
Yeah.
warfare.
Ju
Okay, come
just, like,
on.
put them in place where you're like, "Hey, you are no longer allowed to attack us after hours, like, we are tired." Like, if you could
Give
do
me a
that,
Friday. Yeah.
yeah, I would be really appreciative. So, what does that look like? So, if somebody's looking to get into incident response,
Mhm.
and this is a weird field, I always tell people, like, most companies can't even afford a dedicated incident response team.
True.
It's relatively rare, so that means the jobs are very sparse. But you are actually, and I've seen you hire for entry level, like, that's amazing because there's very few of us who do. What drove you to open up an entry level role for something like this, that other people would be like, no, you need at least 3 to 4 years experience? What is your experience with kind of bringing in and nurturing talent?
I think, so for me, I think it's really important to offer those entry level roles, right?
Yeah.
There's a couple reasons. I mean, one, the bigger and more obvious reason is that everybody wants somebody with experience, which obviously I understand, I get, it makes life a little bit easier. You don't have that ramp up time. But the reality is, cybersecurity has already had a uh, negative number of people to fill jobs, right? Like we don't have enough experienced individuals to fulfill roles. If we're not bringing in those entry level roles and starting to train those new people up, we're going to end up one day where the pool just keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and
Yeah.
eventually then what? So to me it's really important to give those people a chance.
Yeah.
And I think for myself, I look at me and I'm like, here I was, somebody who didn't even come from that background, and somebody gave me a chance, and I've been able to have a successful career. So,
Doing ocean analytics.
yeah,
you
right.
know. And so what are the things that you look for as a hiring manager for your new hires who want these entry level roles? Obviously, so I opened an entry level role with zero experience, very similar to what you opened. And I'm sure what happened to you is the same thing that happened to me, which is I got hundreds and hundreds of applications.
Oh, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, you do get tons and tons of applications, right?
Yeah.
And it that's probably the hardest part, is going through all of those and just kind of getting a feel. I can't even say, I look for these keywords or this specific thing, because there isn't, especially when you're looking for entry level, because everybody comes from something different, which is, why
Yeah.
they're trying to get their foot in the door. Um, I think for me, though, when it comes to at least the interview process, is what I think this might be an army term that I picked up from my husband who did 20 years in the army. Something called FITSO,
Mhm.
FITSO, stands for figure that shit out.
Yeah.
Uh, for me, I would much rather pull somebody in who has a high aptitude for problem solving and thinking through something, than someone who has, an extreme amount of experience knowing like every file system that exists in Windows, right? Because I don't know about you, but every time it seems like anybody rolls out a new piece of anything, everything changes. So
Oh,
that static knowledge is not as useful as it may appear to be. Someone who can think through something is going to be far more useful, because 9 times out of 10 you're going to have Google or something at your fingertips that can help
yep.
answer some of those specific technical things. Whereas someone who has that capability of kind of piecing the stuff together for me, that's really what I look for. I look for someone who
Yeah.
has that capability and that drive.
I always say it comes down to three things for me: passion,
Hmm.
a never ending like thirst for knowledge, like you just want to keep learning and kind of tinkering, uh, and integrity, right? And
Yes.
those are the three key areas that I look for when hiring an entry level. And what I noticed from going through the last round of entry levels is a lot of people don't do the basics. They'll get this opportunity and they'll interview, and I'll be like, tell me a little bit about what you learned, what incident response is. And they'll be like,
Hmm.
oh well, you respond to incidents. Okay, tell me more what that what that looks like. And
Yeah.
you can either, one, tell they're using ChatGPT, because I busted so many people. Like, please don't do that. Like, if you're in an interview, regardless of level, don't use ChatGPT. I would rather you tell me you don't know, but here's how you'll figure it out. Are
Hmm.
you the same way, where you're just like, hey, it's okay not to know everything? Like, this is an interview.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and I think, like you said, that speaks to the integrity piece, right? Like, I
It
think
does.
someone who can say, I don't know, but here's what I would do, or here's what I would ask.
Yes.
Yeah, I would much rather, because, they get through the interview great and dandy. What happens if something, really goes wrong and they need help? If they're not willing to ask for it, that's
That's a
a
bad
big problem.
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would much rather, and likewise as a manager, I would take the opportunity to try and tell my people, if I didn't know something, hey, I don't know. Let me go find out,
Yeah.
because I
And
think that
it's okay not to know.
it
Uh,
is. I think that's
and
something that
and that's at every
somebody,
level. Yeah,
yeah.
we've ingrained it in people that, like, you can't say you don't know something and that it's somehow a negative, but
Hmm.
I will tell you it is not.
No, and
Learning the
it,
basics of what you don't know is the core of that is the most important question you can answer in an interview for me.
mhm.
Knowing what you don't know is more important than telling me what you do know.
For
'Cause
sure, for sure. Yeah, and I mean, this idea that anybody knows all of any of it is just ridiculous.
Right.
I
It's
mean,
a complete fallacy. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. If you tell me you know everything, I'm starting to go, I'm thinking that
Yeah.
you're bullshit.
Yeah. Well, anytime I sense ego too, that's another killer for me. Like, I will not hire someone with an ego. Like, I get it. You think you're super smart. You're not. Uh,
And even if you are, I would take anybody, that maybe doesn't have as much knowledge and is really willing to work and has
learn
that passion, like you
and be
said, and that
humble.
integrity over someone
Yeah.
who knows everything with the ego, because I don't have, that just creates for bad work environments for
It,
sure.
it does, and it makes it so they're more apt to make mistakes. What I've experienced with people who have very inflated egos, myself being one of these people originally, um, is that you think you're really smart, so you think you're doing the right thing, and
Mhm.
then you end up making a mistake, and that's where that integrity piece comes in. Do you own it? Which is something
Mhm.
I did, and I learned to slow down, and then ask for the help that you need, or do you sit there and try to fake it? Right? Oh, I didn't do this, or that couldn't have happened. Like, I can't tell you how many investigations I've done where someone's like, I never did this. I'm like, bro,
The
like,
logs don't lie.
yeah, the logs are pretty clear. I can even show what you opened and what websites you went to. The defer tells me the story. I always call it the I always call it the who done it phase of an investigation. um, and and when you're going through the who done it phase, it's like people try to refute the facts, and that they're no, this is what the data shows us. There, it's not something to be argued. I'm stating a fact, and that's I think an important tidbit too for anyone who's looking to go into incident response. You don't speak in vague terms. You
No.
speak in facts.
Yeah, everything's facts, and you have to have evidence to back it up, right? Like even if everything points to A, if you don't have evidence that straight out shows that A happened, then
Yep.
you leave that out because
Oh, you leave it out, and you
yeah,
don't guess, and you don't have feels. Like, your
no,
feels never come into it. You don't say anything. And I was trained very, very harsh, working for a Fortune 100, where it's like, never say the word I feel,
nope.
because that is not a fact, right? And that is a really key thing. Being able to work incident response, a lot of your job is 20, 30 minutes of firefighting and hours of investigation, log work, and writing up a report and a postmortem, or whatever they call them now. That's not nearly as gruesome, but I still use postmortem. I'm sure our post incident report, is that what they're
Lessons
called?
learned.
Lesson learned? Sure. Uh, it's a postmortem. So after you've worked a 40-hour incident, it's a
It's a
postmortem. That's how you
bookworm.
feel. Yeah, 'cause you're barely functioning as a human. So I really want people to understand a lot of the job, especially for incident response, is
Mhm.
writing and
It is.
documenting. I would say that's the majority of the job. There is that beautiful rush, and all of us with ADHD and autism, like, we get into this field and it's literally our drug, because it's like, oh my god, I love fighting attackers real time, and there is something super cool about that, but that goes away very quickly, and then comes in the boring part of, like, how did they do it? How did they get there? What do the logs say? What does the data tell us? What
Well,
is
and
your experience with that?
yeah, I was say even during the rush of that first 30
Yeah.
to 40 minutes, what I find is so often, and I'm just as guilty of it, right? So often, like you said, we're in that space, we're digging, we're trying to find,
Hyper
and we're
focused,
not
yeah.
documenting things. And ultimately at the end of the day, especially, I think it depends on what the objective is, but you have to go into every investigation assuming that the end point could be some kind of legal action, because you
Yep,
never know. Like you just don't know when that will happen, and so you have to just make that assumption. And it's so hard because that means you have to stop, you have to take screenshots, you have to document what you're doing, you have to, you know. And like I said, it's one of those things that you can put it in every playbook and you can put it in every IR plan, policy, whatever. It probably happens about 25% of the time, because when you're in that mode of digging and trying to find,
oh
you
yeah.
tend to be right there. So, I would say that that's probably one of the hardest things is trying to do that. And then, to your point, yeah, after that, even if you document everything, report writing. Writing skills, it's not something that I think a lot of technical people take into account of needing to be able to
No.
do. But having done consulting for about 5 years and doing
Yep.
a lot of reports, it's super helpful.
So yeah, I mean, you've been a leader now on IR for a bit. What are some of the lessons that you've learned specifically related to kind of leadership that maybe you weren't expecting?
So communication, trying to
Yeah.
communications aligned. A lot of times you get different groups that will try to jump in to help. Everybody means well, but you'll applications team trying to do their investigation and the database team doing their investigation. The IR teams trying to do the investigation, hopefully within the confines of the incident response plan and going through those things due diligence. Trying to kind of manage the communications up to executives, make sure that all the information that needs to get out is getting out, making sure that misinformation is not getting out and causing undue panic. And I think trying to build the relationships with some of those other teams before an incident is something that I learned is really key. So
Yeah.
if you can kind of have that relationship with those different components around your company, um, making sure, I think the big thing is really trying to get them to understand that the IR team or the security team, however you have it in your organization, the job isn't to punish you. It's not to call you out for
Right.
being
Yeah,
wrong. It's like,
we're
hey,
not calling you out.
yeah,
Yeah,
mistakes happen. Come tell us sooner than later,
please.
because so often you get people that don't. They're worried about being
I
reprimanded
was
or whatever the
embarrassed.
case
I
is.
didn't
Yeah,
mean to click on it. Yeah,
exactly, and it's
I
like it'll get so much worse. It's kind of like talking to little kids. It's like, it's okay, come tell me before it gets really bad. Um, but if you can establish that ahead of time, I have found that it makes for a much smoother incident response process, because they'll be like, oh, hey, I found this, you know, here's what happened, what do you need? And then you're not working against each other, you're working with each other. Um, yeah, that's probably if I learned any lesson, that's probably the biggest one I learned, is establishing relationships is such a big part of being an incident response leader, outside of the technical stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the keys I think a lot of people miss out on is building those relationships, having those conversations, and working really diligently with the other teams to become a partner
Yeah.
as opposed to like just the person who shows up when bad things are happening. There's many times where I was like, "Oh, hello everyone. I'm here because something bad happened."
Yeah,
you know, you don't normally see me. There's a reason for that. uh,
exactly.
I own yeah, you're literally seeing someone at their worst moment in some cases where they may have made a mistake or they maybe feel incredibly embarrassed. Like how many
Mhm.
times you investigate like a phishing incident where somebody gets popped and then they feel just like horrendous because they emailed the entire company or things of that nature. Like human mistakes happen. And there's a
Yeah,
reason that social engineering has still been a top 5 kind of risk factor
it's
for
effective.
years.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's effective and people make mistakes. We work in a very high pressure society where it's always on, you're always wanting to respond. And anything I could teach future responders is just take a beat, take a breather, and don't jump in head first. Use your logical brain instead of just riding that dopamine rush of like the incident
Yes.
and take a breather because many times we want to jump to the conclusion that it's a threat because it's cooler than it being a false positive, which is most of the time what it actually is.
More often than not, yeah.
You're like, oh my gosh, our AD is getting attacked by an nmap scan. It's like, nope, it's just some engineer who thought he would run an nmap and accidentally did a /16 and started pinging everything. That's the reality of this field, is that much of what you want to be a threat doesn't end up being a threat, and a lot
Mhm.
of your job is just proving that it's not a threat. So whenever you're engaging on any risk, your job isn't to prove that it's a threat, it's to prove why it's a false positive.
Yeah, and I think there's this idea that everyone's like, oh, it must be APT, or it's like this crazy thing out of this, and I'm like, so often, like, That I think I could count on one hand the number of times I've seen that in my career. It just
I can
that's
too.
not the day to day, right? Like people would love
Yeah.
it to be. It sounds super cool, a great makes for a great
Yeah.
movie, but it's that's just not the reality of it.
Yeah, I always say I'm older than the internet, so APT to me is advanced persistent threat, and it's not an actual attacker group. But it's one of those things where, as you kind of get into it, you would love for it to be nation state. I've only really had to deal with that maybe once or twice in my career. And when you get hit with nation state, um, because it's loud, it's noisy, and it's aggressive to a tune that you've never seen. It is a
Yeah.
very interesting type process, and you'll hear the stories from people, and that's so few and far between of what your day to day is. A lot of your day to day in incident response is looking through logs, validating
Yep.
alerts. Um, you're kind of like an enhanced SOC in ways where
Hmm.
you're looking at the data, then you're taking telemetry data. Maybe you have a tap or something that's pulling in some stuff from your egress points on the firewalls that you're analyzing web traffic or other things. But a lot of your job is boring log analysis. um, it is such a huge part of what you do. I really
It
don't
is.
want to underplay that enough. My daughters sat there and we were working. I was on this incident for probably 3 or 4 days, and it was like
Okay.
kind of nonstop around the clock. And my daughters are just sitting there, and I'm reading through PCAP logs. And my daughters are like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm finding a needle in a needle stack." that is, that is. That is my current job. I need to find what data is slightly anomalous from
Yeah.
the other data to identify when the attacker got in, and you'll do that for hours.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, hours upon hours. And
Yes.
I think everybody thinks that, you know, AI will help with that, but I don't think it's the silver bullet
Uh,
that everybody expects. And partially because, some of the things, it was interesting because we were talking about, what new challenges AI presents. And I mean, there are new challenges for sure, but so much of what we need to do is the stuff we should have been doing already, like baseline.
AI exacerbates the holes that you've ignored for years and the common security practices that you haven't actually done anything with.
Yeah, yeah.
The ability to chain multiple vulnerabilities is only a risk if you don't have basic security controls in place and you haven't really thought about that. And I've been telling people the same thing. Like, yes, AI is scary. Yes, there is capability that is absolutely like horrifying from an incident responder perspective,
Hmm.
like the ability to create a 0 day in less than 4 hours of exploit data being dropped or a patch being dropped is
Yeah.
very scary, but it doesn't negate your defense in depth. It
No.
doesn't remove the ability for you to detect and respond. It simply makes it faster for the attackers to be able to create something that could be used maliciously within
Hmm.
your environment. And that's going to be kind of the interesting thing is, as we grow, we're going to need more humans to be able to really make sense of this data and using your knowledge, your understanding of the environment, things that you're not going to want to give the AI access to everything because it's risky, right? Like,
It
if I
is.
went to my boss 10 years ago and I was like, "Hey man, I would like to bring in this third party tool. They're not publicly traded. In fact, they're $200 billion in debt. On top of that, they want full admin access to all of our stack, and we need to build them an admin account and let them kind of see whatever they need to get things done. And I want to give them full admin access and the ability to do those things that it needs to do." They'd be like, "You're out of your mind.
Yeah.
There's
No
no
way in hell would that
why."
happen.
Yeah, why would we ever allow this? But now all of a sudden it's like, yeah, let's welcome the AI in here and give it full access and give it full admin access and give it access to our repositories or our data stacks. And then we're surprised when things happen, like a code repo is deleted because it had an authentication issue.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Why did the AI have the ability to delete it in general? Like, you didn't build proper RBAC or proper controls around it. We need to handle an AI like you would an API agent. Like, give it the minimum things that it needs to do its job and
Hmm.
nothing else.
Well, and I think, completely agree on all of that, by the way. But
Yeah.
I think, even just the concept of, going back to your example of looking through PCAPs, right, and finding that slight anomaly, it goes back to some of the things that, I remember 10 years ago telling clients, like, hey, baseline your traffic, baseline things going on in your environment. Hey, have asset management and know where stuff is. AI is not going to magically, going to be able to magically figure out where anomalies are if it doesn't know what normal is. And nobody's doing that. Nobody is trying to figure out what normal is first before you can figure out what an anomaly is. You know, that's just how that works. You have to have one to have the other. And I think it's an unfortunate reality that, people think that it's going to be able to do everything and it'll be the silver bullet to fix all
It's
problems.
gonna solve the world. We're
Yeah.
good. Like world hunger is gonna be good. Like we're handling it. it it it
Wouldn't that be
it,
great?
it has yeah, it has a ton of functionality and there's a lot of great things it can do, but it's only as good as the tool user.
Yes.
And if you have somebody who doesn't fully understand the technology or
Hmm.
the things that it should be looking for, writing a competent prompt is quite difficult. Like if you just say, tell me what's anomalous, that's not a good enough data.
No.
You have to give it multiple data points to be able to say, hey, tell me what's anomalous between these hours. This
Hmm.
is the traffic. These are the IPs that I'm specifically looking at. I want you to ignore all these IPs, but you have to have a common core understanding of log analysis to be able to write a prompt that's coherent enough to make your job easier and make it faster.
Agreed.
It comes down to, like, if you're a painter and you're using really crappy brushes, your painting's not going to be that great. So if you're utilizing an AI but you've never actually done any of the jobs that you're trying to do, it's going to show and it's going to show quickly. you
Mhm,
know
mhm. Well, I think, you hit the nail on the head, right? It's a tool. It's a tool.
yeah,
It's not a miracle. It's a
yeah,
tool, and you have to learn how to use the tool properly and effectively, and you have to have all the things you need. A screwdriver's great. If you don't have a screw, it's not going to do you much good. So,
exactly.
you got to have all the pieces together for it to really work right.
There's so much I think you miss out on that what I've seen with new people, and you can kind of tell me if you've seen this similarly. A lot of the basic troubleshooting skills
Hmm.
are no longer something that's in people's ability. So that to me has been really interesting because I think that AI and being able to just Google the answer has removed the need for them to learn troubleshooting skills.
I would agree with that holistically. I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen it in a few places, right? I've seen it in, you know, in new employees and maybe a younger workforce. Um, I've seen it. I'm the daughter of, or the daughter. I'm the mother of a daughter who's going to be 21 soon, and just watching even her and her friends. I mean, my God, just be able to get down the street. I mean, I remember as a kid, if you needed to know how to go somewhere, you either looked at a map or you figured it out. They're like, if they can't punch it into their GPS system, then they almost just sit there like
Yeah.
panicked. It's interesting how technology is, I think, kind of affected, the next generation and the next generation of cybersecurity professionals even. And it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to kind of see how that plays out. Because yeah, I agree. It's important to have that problem solving mindset, and you do kind of see a lot of they want the easy button of, and not
Yeah.
not to their discredit, right? I think it's just that's the way they grew up. I
I
mean, why
mean,
wouldn't they?
look, if I had a tool that would do the job for me, why would I learn it, right?
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
I don't necessarily look at it as a negative, but that's where every time I'm talking to a lot of these younger kids and we're going through and kind of talking about security, it's very clear that their security knowledge is what I call surface deep. And
Hmm.
as soon as you scratch just a little bit, you're like, there's nothing there. Like you know enough to sound like you know what you're talking about, but if I ask you, hey, a machine is no longer being scanned by a vulnerability scanner over the last several weeks, you've been getting results consistently, but all of a sudden results stop, what do you do?
Mm.
And they go into this whole diatribe about this and that, and I'm like, did you try to see if it was on? Like, uh, is that system still active? Is it, has it been decommissioned? And
Right.
it's not even like a gotcha question. It's just a, I want to know how your mind thinks.
Hmm.
And I feel like that is missing from a lot of these entry level candidates, where they don't actually know how to do basic troubleshooting because they've never built a home lab. They've never had to troubleshoot a problem like real time and figure it out. They've never failed multiple times and had to get back up and kind of try it a different way, slightly different, over and over again.
Yeah,
But that's our field. That's the job you're signing up for, especially with incident response.
it
You're
is.
going to handle every incident the same way until you can't, which is
Hmm.
like you're going to try to analyze it the same way. You're going to use the same playbook until you no longer can, and then you're going to have to learn a tool on the fly.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you've never read log data from X platform here? Guess what? You're going to become a log platform expert for this platform, and you got to do it in the next 30 minutes.
Yes.
And you've got a brief in the next hour that you need to explain how they got in, what they got in, and what the logs tell you. And a lot of the job is reading white pages, figuring out stuff on the fly, and just kind
Hmm.
of solving those problems without hesitation and absolute fearlessness.
Yeah.
I feel
No,
I feel like
I completely, yeah, I completely agree. When and and I think there's a couple things there. I mean, from the fearless, I think it's a good lesson in why you always make sure to copy the data before you start doing investigations on it, because sometimes you do have to poke around. But no, what
yeah,
comes to mind is playbooks. They're not bad. Obviously, they're part of a program and you need them, but I've always been a little hesitant of playbooks because, there seems to be this, at least from a compliance perspective, this idea that, we'll have a playbook for everything. That's not possible. It's like the most impossible thing to come up with a playbook for everything, because you don't know what everything is. And what everything is today, again, will be something different tomorrow. And,
yeah.
I think those are good resources to have for those entry level people to kind of get their feet wet. But yeah, I mean, you've got to be able to move past that, or, you're just reading a script, and I can, that's the kind of stuff that AI can do. AI can do those very repeatable tasks over and over and over. I need someone that can think beyond that.
And it's really good at doing that.
Yeah.
And if I just needed that, I wouldn't be hiring
Exactly.
you. Like,
Like I said,
I,
AI can do that for me.
yeah, like there's a lot of things AI can do for me. I need somebody who can critically think, who can challenge ideas, and who can do it on the fly and
Hmm.
feel confident and comfortable enough to, you know, maybe not do it perfect the first time. And like you said, you always back up the system before you start kind of dorking around with it. How
Always.
many times have you investigated something where the person's like, "Oh yeah, I tore it down and rebuilt a new one." You're like, "Oh cool, there goes all my defer."
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my gosh.
thanks thanks for destroying all my evidence. I
Like,
appreciate you.
something happened, so I turned off the machine.
Yeah,
There's half of
awesome.
it gone.
Yep, there goes everything that was in system memory that the attacker would have left artifact wise.
Yep.
I appreciate you. I get it. I understand why you did it, and I thank you for doing it. Next time, just unplug the network cable or disconnect from the wireless, but please do not turn it off.
Yeah.
Leave it on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, because then you've got to do so much more work. You've got to look at like what endpoints we're connecting to, where is the data coming from? Do we have proper logging on those endpoints to be
Hmm.
able to actually give me anything that's not going to be a forwarding address or something useless?
Well,
There's so much of that.
and you pray you have it, right? I mean, so often, and it's such a hard balance, right? Because I get why companies can't keep tons and tons of logs. I mean, the storage costs and everything are ridiculous, and as much
Yeah,
data as
exponential.
produced these days, I mean, my goodness, it's probably a terabyte a minute. Not, don't quote me on that. I'm
Yeah.
making it up, but it's just it's hard. But I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've come in and we've gone to investigate cases as consultants, and turns out that the attacker's been in the environment for what is it, the average time these days is like around 230-ish days, right?
Yep.
If you've only
About
got logs
about
for
a
90
little
days,
over half a year in
yeah,
most cases.
yeah,
Yep.
if you've only got logs for 90 days, there's only so much I can tell you. I can only tell you what's in those
Yeah.
last
I,
90 days.
I can tell you what they did in the last 90 days.
Yeah, yeah, and I think trying to get that concept across, it's hard, and that's security in general, right? The return on investment of security is zero, and that's what you want, because otherwise you're looking at negative, and trying to get the people who hold the purse strings, or the executives, or the business, to understand that ROI of zero is a really good thing, is, I think, still a hill we're trying to climb and conquer as a whole in our
Yeah.
industry.
There's so much of the job, I think, that is unspoken, which is like the amount of work that it takes, the constant learning and knowledge that you need to kind of put yourself into, the work that you need to do to gain that knowledge and skill, as
Mhm.
well as all of the other stuff that comes with it. And I don't think it's talked about enough. Like, it's not like the job ends when you get off work. There's research to be done. There's reading that needs to happen daily.
Mhm.
You're looking at the latest threats, because your executive's going to come to you and say, "Hey, what about this? Hey,
Yeah,
what about this?" And
yeah.
you need to be fully aware of not only what that threat is, but how you're going to be addressing that threat, or if it's a risk to your
Mhm.
environment. And a lot of that is understanding, learning the basics, and really kind of putting your best foot forward when it comes to always like having that thirst for knowledge
Mhm.
that you just can't sedate. It's like I've got to learn more. I've got to learn more. Like Johnny Five. I don't know if that's gonna. It's like way too 80s, but like he needed more input, and that's very much what I expect from a junior level person. And my senior level people, I expect them to be just as like, I want them to have the same level of like, I need more knowledge. I need to learn more. I want to play with the new tools that my
Mhm.
junior level has.
For
That's the
sure.
weirdest thing about this career, is like, you've got to stay at that level forever.
Yeah, I was talking with someone earlier today who, was mentioning, like, they've been doing this for like somewhere between 5 and 10 years, right? And they're like, I keep waiting to like feel like I know, really know it. And I'm like, yeah, keep waiting. You're gonna wait forever. If you're doing it right, you'll never
Good,
feel like you know it.
yeah,
Because
good luck, bro.
yeah, and that's the whole point, right? I mean, it's that it's not like, I think a lot of other careers, you kind of gain this knowledge set, and you're somehow like, the person that kind of holds the keys to that kingdom, and there's some of that to some respect in this field, but a lot of it is like, no, we're all sitting here learning it together for the first time, because it's brand new, and nobody knows what it is. But at the same
Yeah.
time, I think that's where, like you said, that passion comes in. Like, that's what makes it fun, right? Like, to me, I love that, because otherwise things get boring. I mean, I don't know about you, but other professions that I've tried, it was like, okay, well, now I know this much, and I've done this the same way every day, and I'm gonna try something different now, whereas
I
I
mean,
feel like you
yeah,
always have
I've
that.
literally done like every job in security, because like every 2-3 years I'm like bored, and I go and try to do something new. Leadership is the only place that I've found that I've been really content,
Mm-hmm.
because I really love growing talent and kind of helping teams be the best they can possibly be.
Oh, for
That
sure.
is just it's such a massive passion, that I get such a dopamine rush from like helping you get to your goals, or helping you solve
Mm-hmm.
a problem. That's amazing to me. That's my favorite part of being a leader, is like, you get to watch these people grow and develop into these absolute powerhouses, and like, you had a little bit to do with that.
Yeah,
And that to me is so cool.
yeah, there is something to be said about that. I would be lying if I said I don't sometimes kind of miss, getting into the technical weeds of things. Sometimes,
I
looking for that needle in the haystack when you find that needle is like the
oh
adrenaline
my,
rush. It's like, yeah, but
it is the greatest.
it's
I
great.
I always say I miss the adrenaline hit. I don't miss the life of dealing with
I mean,
the
there's
the
trade-off.
chaos of it. Yeah, but it is an absolute amazing thing when you've been hunting for like literally hours or days in some cases, and you go, hang
Mhm.
on, I think I found it. And you're like so kind of snowblind, because you've been looking at the logs for so long. The first thing you do is message your buddy, your
Yes.
battle buddy, and you
Am I
go,
seeing this
hey,
right?
double check me because I'm kind of snowblind. Can you tell me if this looks like anomalous activity? I believe I found the way they got in, but I need someone else to sanity check me because I'm kind of on the edge of sanity right now from
Yes,
looking at this data forever. Because
yes,
it's so easy to get caught in that kind of snowblind moment where you've been like staring at snow for so long
yeah,
and you don't see it, and then when you finally catch it, it is euphoric in
it
many
is.
cases.
It is.
It
You're like,
is.
I think I found it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
you feel so incredibly justified. You're like, yes, I am the greatest.
well, and
It's
I think too, kind of going back to what we were talking about, like how so often, you may not have the logs or you may not have the data that's needed.
yeah,
It's not uncommon to go through an entire investigation and say, well, based on the knowledge,
we
I don't know how many times I've written, based on the evidence that we have, you know,
we are unable to determine point of impact or
yes,
an impact statement. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, so when you have that opportunity to find that, like, yeah, there's definitely a rush to that for sure. But
so that's a great point too. That so much of the job goes unresolved.
it does.
Ah, that and
It really does.
it's something I've even forgotten because it's been a while since I've done IR stuff. But so much of the job is just never actually comes to a total like I've accomplished something and I've been able to show my work.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just like
A lot of it is, proving that we've gone through everything that we can, and
yeah.
based on what we know, this is the possibility or the most likely, but we cannot say for sure. Like that's sometimes the best as it gets.
Yeah, totally. And that's one of the things that I feel like we miss out on in kind of explaining how we do things is that you're not always going to have an answer,
Hmm.
and sometimes no answer is the answer, and it sucks, but that's a lot of what the job is because there were active decisions made
Hmm.
not to have logging for longer than this. There were active decisions made not to have disaster recovery. There were choices that were made that you, as the incident responder, now get to deal with that you have to be like, well, unfortunately, we couldn't fail over because there was no failover.
Yeah,
Um, this was a decision made before I was even part of this company. We've made this decision actively, and when I've gone in and investigated after the fact for smaller companies, a lot of times it's like, hey, where are your backups? They're like, oh, well, we decided it just wasn't worth it to do backups. I'm like, awesome. Well, like, your data is currently encrypted.
yeah.
I I I I I I will do my best to see if I can hack it and break the encryption. But if the attackers are using like AES or something, it's over.
Yeah.
Like, your data is encrypted. You can pay, and we can hope. And I've seen attackers release data, like, but many times there's a they don't.
It's a game.
It's a gamble, and I've gotten lucky. I would say like 50 is probably pretty accurate that I've helped companies negotiate with an attacker
Hmm.
and we were able to get the decryption key. And then other times they just take the money and they run, right? Especially if you're paying in Bitcoin or something like that.
Yeah.
It becomes you have to figure out what's worth the risk. Like, if your business is going to actively fail, because many smaller companies are in this position when they get compromised. If we don't fix this, we lose everything.
Yeah.
Then the gamble of paying out 500 or $1,000 or $2,000 doesn't seem like that big of a risk.
Hmm.
But if the risk is, hey, we're going to be down for a little bit, like, we'll get back up and we should be fine, we can build from Terraform or we can do these things, then it's probably not that bad. But many companies, that data breach is the difference between whether or not people get paychecks.
For sure. Well, and it's kind of interesting, and you bring up the ransomware thing. I think one of the interesting things about being in the industry over longer periods of time is you kind of, we tend to want to look at it case by case, but you kind of have to look at the trend, right? So, um,
Yeah.
I think it wasn't Verizon or CrowdStrike that released one of their reports that was talking about, ransomware is still there, it's still affecting people, but that the number of companies that are actually paying out has gone down quite a bit because people
Yeah.
are finally starting to realize, they're starting to have backups. It's like, oh, this is why you've been telling me for all this time that I need to back up data.
So the offsite backups were for a reason.
Yeah, go figure,
Now it
right?
makes sense. Yeah.
I think you kind of have to look at those things and take those as wins where you can, the longer you're in
Yeah.
it, because I think the longer you're in it, the easier it is to be jaded, because sometimes
Oh my,
you say
that
things
is the hard.
over and over and people just ignore you forever and you're like, why am I even here? But seeing those kinds of things, I think is for me anyway, kind of helps keep me going. I'm like, well, at least they finally got it.
You're like, finally, they're seeing the light in the tunnel. I think that's very true. Is a lot of the job is telling people to do stuff and being ignored.
Sadly, I mean, it really kind of is. It really kind of is. But, you have to stay consistent and you have to just, hold strong.
I think that's the hardest part of this job in general is that consistency and coming in with the right mindset and applying the same logic to a threat that is going to be a false positive. Maybe you've investigated it before, maybe the rule's not tuned as good as it should be, maybe you opened a ticket to the firewall but they still haven't tuned that rule. Knowing that it's going to be a false positive but still treating it like it's not going to be is, again, I think just that goes back to that integrity and that kind of
Mhm.
passion where you love doing this, and even though it's going to be a false positive, it's still part of the job, and it's part of the job that you love is that kind of the investigation aspect of it.
It is. And, I mean, I think it's been proven more and more that, the minute you assume it's a false positive is the time that it's not.
Oh
You
man, there are multiple companies who've been in the news who thought
Yep.
it was a false positive, and they ignored the signs because they used a lower level analyst looked at it, said, oh yes, false positive, did very little research
Hmm.
and didn't apply the same scrutiny to the investigation and just moved past it super fast, and it happens all the time.
Yeah, I mean,
I
I remember early on in my career, I can't obviously give too many details either.
Right.
But something in a law, I think it was a snort rule or something that went off, but
Hmm.
something that was like, something's not right here, right? Like, I think you have
Yeah.
to really trust that intuition too. I mean, it's a catch-22 because you don't want to go down the rabbit hole and completely lose time and
Yeah.
not do what needs to be done. But at the same time, you have to kind of trust your gut because, it was one of those like, something's not right here. And I kind of pushed it forward and, the powers that be did some scans that said, no, everything's fine. Nothing's wrong. It's just an anomaly. And I just in my gut was like, no, this is wrong. And then we had a third party come and say, hey, did you know that, this system
Right.
for all these
Yeah.
things? And sure enough, it was related to what I found. So it's sometimes it can feel like, it's you against the world, but,
Oh
trust
man.
yourself, double check yourself. You should always double check yourself, but trust yourself too. I think that's an important one to teach some of the younger people because it's
I,
easy to
I I
be
think that
told,
trusting your gut
yeah,
and not ignoring that, like, something seems off. Like, I always say it's not passing the smell test, right? I'm like, no, that doesn't make sense. Like, you kind of dig into it. Well, I don't want to keep you much longer. You've been absolutely amazing. Like, thank you so much for your time. Is there
you.
anything that you wanted to plug? I don't know if you wanted to plug your company or whatever. I'm happy to let you do that.
I would love to. I'm actually looking for a job right now, so
Oh,
I will plug me. No.
heck yeah. No, definitely plug you. Please look her up on LinkedIn. I'll add your LinkedIn. You've been phenomenal. It's clear you know your stuff.
Well,
This
thanks.
is a very hard market. So if anyone is listening, she's got my seal, because I would hire her in a heartbeat for running my IR team or anything, honestly, because you're that type of employee that, like, I could be like, hey, Christina, I just need you to learn X, and I'll be back in like a couple weeks, and just you tell me everything about it, and you'd be like, I'm on it, and you
Yep.
would learn it.
That's
Yeah,
having fun.
it, exactly. That's the best part about it. So no,
Right.
that's the best plug. And please, if there's anything
100%.
I can do, please reach out. I'm happy to help, of course. And everyone else, good luck out there. Thank you so much.